We've learned that free speech, which may sometimes be offensive and upsetting, is only best countered by more free speech.
Professor Grayling, thanks very much indeed. Our next witness is Haleh Afshar, who's Professor of Politics and Women's Studies at the University of York and is on the line from there now. Professor Afshar, what do you think is actually going on here? Is this a clash of values, or do you think it's something more complex or even more sinister?
Well, I do worry very much that this is coming on at this juncture or in the context of Islamophobia, and that I'm particularly worried about the repeat publications of these. I mean, I think that Germans would not publish something saying that the Holocaust was something that the Germans had in their ideology, in their nature, and then laugh about it. So we have to actually stand back and think, what is the point, and why is the media, some media, colluding with the Islamophobic constructions that's going on and coming up with this clash of civilizations? And we come to the point that, right now Iran is in the frame. Now, I don't want to say that there are always conspiracies, but it's so reminiscent of Iraq. We are thinking that we're going to be, the Iranians are thinking that they're going to be bombed, and we have this creation of course, they're terrorists anyway, and Melanie Phillips would worry that if she said anything we would bomb her, and so you create this atmosphere of fear, which actually justifies then going and killing a whole lot more people. So that really worries me.
Ian Hargreaves, your witness.
Professor Ramadan, I think, was saying that where this began with the Danish set of events and the motivations around the book illustrator and all of that, that it had been politicised by Islamic governments or governments in Islamic countries in order to, for a variety of reasons, to raise the temperature. I mean, you seem to be saying that this is a sort of Western conspiracy.
I think that there are two stages. I think that initially when this occurred, it did actually seem like a kind of present to some Islamic governments, but I don't remember the Iranians, for example, stepping in. But if you actually look at the recent events in the Middle East, if you see the Hamas coming after an election which was, in inverted commas, democratic, and suddenly being told, oh, well, yeah, this is not the kind of government we want. And you see all the hullabaloo which is going around about the nuclear process. And in this particular time, you then have the Germans and the French just publishing this. You begin to wonder, why actually do this?
Well, do you know? Can you not see? I mean, you've worked as a journalist yourself. Can you not see? Do you not acknowledge that there is a significant principle at stake here for journalists?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have worked as a journalist under circumstances where you couldn't say what you think, and I defend the right of journalists to say what they like. But at the same time, we actually live in a country where racism is recognised, and you couldn't actually have caricatures which were overtly racist, and to have caricatures which are overtly anti-Islamic, that's worrying me.
Yeah, but the issue here is at one level about race, but at another level it's not. I mean, the debate defines itself as a debate between the freedom from religious abuse versus the freedom of expression. Do you think that religion is entitled to any extraordinary protection from the normal conduct of free speech in a democracy?
I think in a democracy which accepts that race can have such an exception, then people who actually see their primary identity as their faith should also be entitled to a similar right.
Melanie Phillips.
Do you think that in certain circumstances, such as religion, freedom of speech should be limited to avoid giving offence? I'm not quite sure I understood where you stood on that particular issue.
I actually think that in all circumstances we have to think about the situations in which we open our mouth and the sensitivities around us.
Right.
And it seems to me that at the time when the Muslims are being painted as terrorists, as killers, as only capable of doing harm, it really does not help to then go on and produce something that simply seems to indicate that from the inception of their faith, their prophet carried the bomb on his head. Now, this seems to me not only unfunny, but also and offensive, but also it seems to actually fanning the fires of hatred that is going around
Well,
already.
you talk about fanning the fires of hatred, but it is surely astonishing that you are painting it this way round when we saw in London yesterday, a demonstration in London, Islamic demonstrators shouting that Denmark should be bombed, that those who slander Islam should be exterminated, that those who insult Islam should be beheaded, that Europe will pay in a repeat of the July bombings. If anyone is inciting hatred, it is surely the Islamic world, which is organising itself for what they call a holy war against Europe.
Okay, but the difference is that as a Muslim, I can tell you that I reject what they're saying, that I don't think that they speak on my behalf, that they are actually what they're saying is unacceptable to most Muslims.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that.
No,
but
let me just tell you, on the other hand, I cannot say that about an image which vilifies the Prophet. Now, you know, this is where you draw the line.
Well, the image that you say vilifies the Prophet, it was, in fact, a political comment, not about the Prophet and not about Islam. It was a political comment about the intimidation being meted out to an illustrator in Denmark to an author in Denmark who couldn't find an illustrator for his innocent book. It was a protest against Islamic intimidation.
I'm sorry, you know, you can't expect Muslims to behave exactly like the Westerners do. If the Muslims feel, as a matter of their faith, that they do not like to have the picture of their prophets, then that view should be respected. What is it to some Dane that he wants to have our prophet on his book, if we as Muslims think that this is not acceptable?
Clifford Longley.
When you see on television pictures of these demonstrators in London with placards containing words like kill and death to and massacre and so on, do you think the police would be right to intervene and say that these amount to the offence of a breach of the peace, to say the very least, and that people doing that should be arrested?
I'm pleased that they don't, because these are simply words, but it is also the case.
So they are committing a crime, are they not? They are actually behaving in a way that's illegal.
Well, in that case, you know, I mean, I think that's between the police and them. But, I mean, they do not represent me. And I have actually been in discussion with representatives of these people publicly.
So you wouldn't object if they were to be arrested?
Well, I actually think I think that we have to think why this is happening, what is the context, and you know, if the police thinks they have to be arrested, then no doubt due process will take place.
Stephen Rose.
Yes, but it's really not good enough to actually say that the Danish cartoonists are not speaking in my name, and presumably not speaking in the name of the majority of Danes. I mean, there is an issue here about values, about freedom of speech, and so on. There's also an issue about not making hate speech, and the placards were hate speech, and they ought to be treated as such, should they not?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said, I actually abhor that kind of behaviour. What really worries me is that violence breeds violence, and when Muslims feel that they are being under attack, they do behave in ways that I think is unacceptable. But on the other hand, and that's why I was saying that, you know, if the police saw fit, then, you know, the due process should take place. But I, at the same time, think that we should not be expected to just immediately begin to accept all of the values of the West because we live in the West, because a Danish man wants a caricature of our prophet. We don't want it, and I think our views should also be respected.
Professor Afshar, do you think that Americans should object and be entitled to respect for their feelings when people burn their flag, as they quite frequently do?
I think they should, but I also think that Americans should respect the lives of the people that they kill on a regular basis. And I think that's the problem, that when you embark on violence, then violence breeds violence. And this is why it worries me, that in the climate of Islamophobia, which is intense, we suddenly have we have this whole business of repeating in the name of free speech. I mean, free speech has always also been about respect and about understanding and about mutual understanding. It's not about just, you know, people just shouting at each other.
Professor Haleh, Afshar, thanks very much indeed.